Today we're doing 2019 한양대학교 수시 신입학 전형 글로벌 인재 영어 모의 essay in nice big letters. And today we are going to introduce the new term, cognitive dissonance, which actually shouldn't be a new term for you because if you had studied 수능, if you have studied TOEFL, if you have studied SAT, you would have at least gone through once or twice or many times. So, Eddy, hello.
Hi.
Good to meet you again.
Thank
now,
you,
we should go over the term cognitive dissonance before we start this.
Yeah.
Now, could you give me your definition of what cognitive dissonance is?
Cognitive dissonance is a term in psychology that when one belief or one information, one idea goes against your original idea. So, like for example, smoking cigarettes is bad for your health, physical health.
Right.
But you also get mental stress when you don't smoke. When like you used to be smoke, if you are used to be a smoker.
Right.
And second example I want to give out is, let's say you go to a dealer shop and you buy a used car or a new car, and then you come back home and then you think about, oh, if I went to another dealer shop, maybe I would have gotten cheaper.
Right.
Or always as there's a second thought goes against your original belief. So I think that's a cognitive dissonance of the term.
Right.
Yeah.
And in 수능 passage, there's a passage about buying a mobile phone. And if you were to buy two mobile phones, one say Samsung, one iPhone, at first you try to make the best rational decision that you can, right? So you look at things very objectively. This one has better graphics. This one has better camera. This one has more chips, more RAM or these computer technologies, which I'm not very familiar of. But in any case, you start comparing, and then you made the best possible choice. But then even after it, you start wondering whether you had made the right one. However, our brain also make that adjustment soon, because otherwise you will be second guessing again and again and again and again. That's going to drive us crazy.
Yeah.
And that's going to lead us to not functioning well. There's a very interesting research that talks about where a student was forced to write an essay that goes against their own belief. So a student might be asked to write an essay that says, oh, let's raise the tuition because it's going to be good for us. In reality, none of the students believe that, but they were asked to write it, and those who chose to write it are going against their idea. And they see what activity happens in their brain and how they're thinking. So that was very interesting. However, one thing to note, under that situation, if students were asked to write or forced to write it, then that's no longer cognitive dissonance because they were forced to do it. So, a professor might say, if you don't write this, if you don't write an essay that that you are accepting or you're welcoming the tuition increase, then, I'm going to give you an F. Then that's not going to be a real cognitive dissonance in actual sense because you're forced to. Yeah. And then you're not really fighting with your original thought or your rational thought, rather.
Yeah.
Okay. So these three passages, again, I really liked it. What'd you think of it just before we get into
this? All we did so far was really focusing on economic side, like Thomas L. Friedman, the Lexus and the Olive Tree. This also focuses on economic side of customer, of what is company's role, company's responsibility to make people trust, believe in their product.
Right.
Yeah. So prevent cognitive dissonance from customers. I really liked it and really good passage.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump right through it. Passage A, I'm going to read them. The prediction of consumers' ever-changing purchasing behaviors and patterns has become increasingly complicated. Numerous recent empirical studies have sought to identify the antecedents of consumer behaviors that may radically alter their intentions. Consumer research suggests that customers employ different information processing strategies, depending on the message and its consistency with their existing beliefs. For instance, information that supports a person's belief will lead him or her to engage in heuristic information processing, which requires less effort. On the other hand, consumers faced with information that is inconsistent with their existing beliefs will engage in analytical and systematic information processing, considering all informational input, which requires more effort. Some studies have revealed even more acute changes in purchasing behavior patterns when consumers encounter word-of-mouth information about a particular product or service. As consumers experience high levels of perceived risk associated with the purchase of a product, they tend to rely on word of mouth more than an advertising claim created by the product's provider. When the word of mouth information supports the customer's existing beliefs, there will be no conflict in consumption behavior. The tendency to rely on word of mouth is greater for service-related products with higher credential quality or a high level of product involvement, where the customer tends to undertake assimilation efforts to reduce the discrepancy between his or her expectations and the performance evaluation.
Wow.
Good. So, interesting thought here. So when there's word-of-mouth information and the word from the product's provider, customers will trust word of mouth.
Yeah.
So in case of buying iPhones and Galaxy phones, obviously people are going to trust your friend. However, the problem here is your friend may not be a tech genius or he's not going to be an engineer.
Yeah.
Right? Yet you are going to trust his words over the company's words. Now, why do you think these things happen?
The first reason of why people rely on word of mouth is that they probably use the product longer than they did. So let's say customer A person A and person B. If person A uses the Android phone and person B been using iPhone for whole entire life,
right,
a person A will rely on word of mouth from person B because he been using iPhone long time, so he knows what's really good, what's disadvantage, and why you should buy this, and he will step by step explain why you should buy iPhone to qualify your needs. So person B focuses on person A focuses on person B's word of mouth because they trust that person.
Right.
Yeah.
And also here, important thing to note, and what you should probably have underlined is if there's a conflict happening between what you have believed and the information you're getting, then people starts to analyze that information. And while analyzing, they tend to trust people that you trust and you know, rather than true experts, because simply you haven't built any special relationship with that person. And I think your example of Android phone and Apple iPhone is accurate. Now, we literally change our phones in every 2-3 years now, despite how amazing they are, right? Yeah. And when you do so, I personally have been an iPhone user. I've been using iPhone for 12 years, I think, 12, 13 years. Ever since iPhone 3 came out, I have never used Galaxy phone. Wow. And whenever people tell me, I will first defend that idea that Galaxy is better than iPhone. But then someone whom I really trust comes to me and start telling me that how good it is, then I'll start analyzing. And in the end, it's going to be those few that I really like as a friend or a family that's going to change my purchasing behavior, my final decision. And that's quite dangerous when you think of it. Yeah. Right? And you analyze it. And also another thing to point here is, well, two things. Is one, if you're an engineer from Apple and say that Apple phones are great, there's some stake here. I mean, you get paid. I mean, this engineer, he gets paid for telling people that iPhones are great. But my friend, my mother, my wife, they don't get any benefit from saying that. Yeah. Now, I think that's in a way why power bloggers are, despite they also get some kind of benefits from a company by saying good things about certain products. I think that's why bloggers are in huge demands these days. Yeah. Because people think that they don't get any kind of benefit from these people, right, or the companies. Yeah. Another thing to note here is what engineers seem to think benefits the customer are often different than what customers actually need and enjoy. Steve Jobs once said that the true function of an engineer is to enlighten people about what they need, which they may not have known. But that often goes wrong because in the end, Steve Jobs might have brought to the table what he wanted, right? Yeah. How he wanted people to behave in terms of, in the realm of communication. Now, luckily, he had succeeded and he had provided products that helped people. Yeah. But still, we must realize that the world that people like Steve Jobs saw, or Bill Gates saw, or Mark Zuckerberg is seeing, are quite different than the rest of the world, majority of the rest of the world who wish to still be in touch with nature, still want to make face-to-face communication, right? Yeah. So, that's another reason why we want to talk to our friends about it, because those are the people whom we want to use these technology products with. Yeah. So, anyway, so that's passage A. Not brief, but brief. All right, let's go with B. Now, B rather takes the definition cognitive dissonance more forwardly. So here we go. The concept of cognitive dissonance provides a number of superb insights on the reasons underlying inconsistencies between one's behavior and beliefs, and why we often try to reduce this uncomfortable state by moderating our actions through self-justification. Cognitive dissonance is a psychological state of discomfort resulting from an imbalance in cognition, which motivates one to remove the adverse condition to regain cognitive balance. We frequently confront cognitive dissonance in our lives when we are choosing among sets of alternatives, when we are forced to make a positive comment despite having a negative view of a situation, or when are juggling two compelling or ill-fitting beliefs. Example, knowledge that smoking is dangerous and beliefs that smoking aids mental health. In the field of marketing, cognitive dissonance is often considered to be synonymous with post-decision or post-purchase anxiety, a state associated with significant purchases that usually follow consideration of attractive alternatives. For instance, a consumer who has just purchased an expensive car may experience cognitive dissonance when he or she has second thoughts about the purchase and reflects that an alternative could have been a better choice. So this one is more fitting to what you had said earlier. Yeah. Now, any thoughts about this?
The example of smoking aids mental health. Since I'm a smoker, okay. I also do that when I take out one cigarette each time. Oh, this might cause a big trouble in the future. It's going to cause
lung cancer, but it's going to save you from stress.
Yeah, so I believe that. Yeah, and actually facing cognitive dissonance every day since...
Right. Yeah. And I think people tend to make cognitive dissonance about their career choices. And that's why you should all study hard, because, the more you study, harder, right? The more the life choices you could take. But, in their 20s, after graduating from college or even grad school, you're going to make the best possible decision about your career. Right? You can't stop from accompaniment or hiring director to not choose you or choose you. But either case, you are going to go to interviews and you are going to go to university interviews, same thing, right? And you are going, and then after making a decision, you are going to go to the university that that provides you, or a job that promised you the best possible result for your life. And then come around 40 or 50, you start wondering, what if I pursued music? I would have become a rock legend. I would have become a hip hop legend, right? So those things also happen. And unless you balance it out by looking at your children, well, I would have been a rock star, but I would have never had my beautiful kids, right? Then that kind of thing will stay. All right, let's jump into passage C. Trust is seen as an expression of security between partners when making an exchange, or in another type of relationship, as a belief that the partner in a negotiation will not exploit or take advantage of others' vulnerability, as a willingness to rely on an exchange partner in whom one has confidence. Consumer trust is defined as the expectations held by the consumer that the service provider is dependable and can be relied on to deliver on its promises. Studies have pointed to trust as a fundamental ingredient for the development of a strong and a long-term relationship between consumers and organizations. 3 variables for the formation of trust need to be considered. The first concerns the consumer's notion regarding the company's competence. The second is the perception of benevolence. And the third is the consumer's evaluation of the company's orientation towards problem solving. These build essential relationship quality, which contributes to the negotiation of the effects of a provider's negative service episode. All right. A very fitting example. Now, if you were an active student, which you must be if you're planning for Hanyang University or any university towards 국제학부, you need to underline these things. When it says 3 variables, it's going to give you very straightforward 3 ideas, right? First, again, now if you haven't, do it now. First, company's competence. Second, benevolence. And third, company's orientation. And I could give an example about this right now. As much as I've been an iPhone user, when it comes to laptops, I've been an avid Samsung user. Now, for a reason. Now, when I was a kid, the computer at home, there was once a time where there used to be just one computer at home. And that computer is going to be in your father's study or your parents' room, right? Yeah. And that's the only computer at home, right? Now, my father was using Apple computer, 2C or some old model. Actually, you can see that in Spider-Man's desk in Marvel movie because the new Spider-Man, he collects retro tech. Anyway, and so which means ever since I was in the grade school, I've been using Apple computer, even till I graduated college from the States. And then I came to Korea and I started thinking about which computer should I buy. And I've been hooked to the Apple curse. But then I started thinking, okay, now I'm in Korea. Finding Apple Center is a lot more difficult and more expensive to fix. So I started buying Samsung laptops. And I have never regretted that decision. I know Samsung is just as good of a computer tech company as Apple. That's my belief, despite others. B, I know it's benevolent, or I know it's benefiting Korean economy, right? And third, if there's any problem with the computer, I know for sure that compared to any other company, Samsung will do it faster and more conveniently than others, which has been true for me because my computer had broken down several times for the past few years. But every time it happened, it fixed right up. So I've been happy with that. And that's why I have a very strong image with Samsung. And I know Samsung also, they have been great with their advertisements. I think it now have changed, but just several years ago, they used to use catchphrase saying 또 하나의 가족, just another, we're the other family of yours, right? So that makes you feel that if you are good to Samsung, Samsung's going to do something for you back because you're a family, right? Yeah. Not that I really trusted, Egon is my uncle now. I never thought about it that way. But still, I mean, these 3 things, these 3 variables have been very important. Now, if I had known that buying Samsung will contribute to polluting Korean waters, then I may not have purchased it. Now, I am, although aware that there have been some victims or people who have been fatally ill from their semiconductor factories. However, I guess Samsung's doing great in terms of hiding all their worst secrets. Yeah. But that's how I've been feeling. Now, any thoughts about C?
I used to be Windows user.
Okay.
Me too, but I'm a MacBook user now.
You wanted to be that cool kid with the Apple logo in a coffee shop?
Yeah, that was one of those shining stuff. The main reason was because I used to play game on laptop.
Right.
My laptop was actually LG X Note. Yeah, it was the old ones. And it kept getting lagging because it was just probably slow or maybe virus.
Right.
And I know that Windows are really weak at virus. And I looked at a MacBook product and they said antivirus really fast, and the trackpad of your computer can do anything. Your 4 fingers can lead to anywhere. So I used for like a week with my friends, and I just hooked onto one of those MacBooks. Like, wow, I just gotta get those. So I just threw out my X Note, and as you mentioned, Apple Center are really hard to find in Korea. But I treat my computer really well. So I think going in terms of customer service and warranty-wise, I think Samsung's better. But in customers-wise, like
gaming customers,
yeah, accessible, very easy to use, I think MacBook's better.
Okay.
Yeah.
What did you say about fingers just now?
Oh, those 4 fingers,
yeah.
You can do anything with your trackpad, like sliding. You can't do
it.
You don't need a mouse.
I hated that. I mean, you could. Getting your phone and doing this is one thing, and I see people who try to do this on their mouse pad. Yeah. That's not a thing for me.
That magic mouse.
So let's go over the essay topic. The essay topic goes based on the passage A, B, and C. Write an essay on consumer behavior. Now, let's cut it here for now. Now, consumer behavior we have talked about so far. Right, cognitive dissonance, right, and which also could count to be said as a post-decision or post-purchase anxiety. Also, in A, we talked about word of mouth. Yeah. Why word of mouth is more trusted, and then in C, we talk about how trust is built upon. Right.
Yeah.
Now, your discussion may address, but not necessarily be limited to the following: how the case of B is understood with the ideas described in A. So we briefly touched upon it, right? How cognitive dissonance takes place, probably because word of mouth. How the case of B is understood with ideas described in A, and how the notion of trust in C can be related to the case of B. So as far as I'm concerned with C being the strong Samsung laptop supporter for as long as I'm going to be in Korea. It's very unlikely that I'm going to have cognitive dissonance when it comes to my laptops. But then I might have cognitive dissonance for other things. So it really depends on what kind of product it is, how much you know, and maybe you might realize in the end that your friend have not been very knowledgeable in whichever purchase that you had made.
I think the perception of what you're getting of product feedback is, I think it really depends on how how company reacts to customer.
Right.
So Apple kind of failed to be really easily accessible. Right. So instead of making a lot of service center, they just distributed their authority to third party, which is like premium reseller. So we have to, if we go to Apple Center in 가로수길 in Seoul, we can't really fix our MacBook because they're going to send us away to, just go to third party. And that's how Apple operated in Korea, and people kind of how they turn their back.
And that's why you should have bought Samsung laptop.
Oh no, I'm still Mac. I'm still using Mac.
Well, and this would be an interesting notion to add. Some techie people may know about this. But first, what you just said is refurbishing, right? Refurbish, and same deal. When you take your iPhone to an iPhone center, they're not gonna fix your iPhone and give your iPhone back. They're just gonna give you a fixed used iPhone from somewhere that looks sort of new, and say, here's an iPhone. You can re-download everything that you've been using. Goodbye. Right. I know they don't do that with your laptops. Yeah, that's why laptops take forever. But these refurbishing kind of turns you away. Yeah. Now, but more importantly, what you just said earlier about Apple's been inaccessible when it comes to their technology. One of the recent movements that have been happening is open sourcing. Right? Like, for instance, Microsoft Word, Microsoft Office, all Word, Excel, and PowerPoints, they have been making a lot of money because they make the best word processor, and rightfully so, they kept all their secrets secret, right? Or technology secret. But lately, just about a decade old, I mean, there have been a lot of movement with computers about open sourcing. Because for as long as you keep it hidden, concealed, then you'll never know why these viruses are happening and why these inconsistency or crashings are happening between softwares. So I think that's one of the best reasons behind Google Chrome, right? Google Chrome, it's an open sourced browser. So people could see how it is created. They could literally see the blueprints of the website or web browser so that whenever a developer comes along to try to develop a product or a program, they can develop it in a way that won't crash with Google. In the long run, Google realized that's, for as long as they know how to distribute it well so that people will continue to use Google Chrome, they knew that will be possibly the safest way for internet users to continue to use Google, more market domination, and at the same time, the least amount of crash. Yeah. So Apple, like I said, wanted to be sort of God to let us know what we needed, right? Again, Steve Jobs said, our job is to enlighten people, right? We're going to teach you what you didn't know about the world or about the technology so that you could live better with us. Whereas there are type of people that, okay, here's what I developed, check it out. If you could improve it, please do so. And that's in a way how Google Doc works, right? You could share your document and save the amount of storage space so that people could save it. People can look at the document saved in one location, but everyone can still read it and fix it if you're allowed to. Yeah. Right. So these open source movement kind of affects it, how people behave towards these technology companies. So if you are well aware about open source, and if you are well aware of how some of the companies are providing their service through open source technology, then you might be. And that's why, in a way, there's so many YouTube videos about what's inside iPhone, right? Yeah. When you open it, this is designed like this, and that's designed like that. So if you want to change the way your iPhone looks or change the way iPhone works, then you could do it this way. And that's why also, about 10 years ago, jailbreaking. Oh, yeah. Jailbreaking was immensely popular because they wanted to do it in their own way, right? And they knew that if they do it that way, then they probably could use their iPhone for the fullest potential. Yeah, right. Now, speaking of iPhone, I do want to add one last thing before we move on to the essay. Is you might have heard, remember iPhone was accused, and it came out to be true, but every time you update your phone's operating system, OS, it's slower. Yeah. And iPhone purposely had done that because it's when you start to feel your iPhone getting slower, you want to think about buying a new phone. Yeah. And these kind of sleazy tactics these companies have drops the credibility, right? Yeah. So, that's in a way why iPhone had lost a lot of customers and thought that, that's a sleazy way of doing things.
But you and I still Apple customers.
Right. And in a way, though, because it's crazy in a way. I mean, if you put it this way, I have bought think about all the apps that I have bought for the past 13 years, right? People don't leave company where, that you're a slave to in a way. Not because, you don't hate them, but because there's so much at stake even with you. I mean, think about all the company. I mean, for now, it'll be difficult for me to go from Windows, Samsung to Apple. Yeah. Because there's so many things that are incompatible.
Like Dropbox.
Right.
Yeah, you can't really do it in Mac.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why, you tend to stay with them. But still, you will influence others not to. Right? And that word of mouth might be kind of tricky because here and then you will have people who use Mac while telling others not to use Mac. Right? And you enjoy all the benefits of it. And those benefits outweigh all the negativities that but you're still going to tell people that, don't buy Mac. Yeah. You'll regret it. Right? Yeah. So that's why. Anyway, let's get to the essays. Now, there's two. One that starts with B's notion of cognitive dissonance can be understood with consumers' use of information. Processing strategy explained in A. We call that essay 1. Yep. And essay 2, analyzing consumer behavior has always been a pressing task for companies throughout history. Now, between 1 and 2, which one do you like better?
I like 1.
Okay, and your reason is?
This essay compared to number 2, this essay I think failed to go deep inside of what really cognitive dissonance is in terms of when people rely on word of mouth. This number 1 essay came up with the scenario of how cognitive dissonance should be eliminated through these steps. So,
right.
Yeah, and I think the last sentence of this essay, as it stated, companies' formation of trust can play an important role in combating this dissonance. This also emphasizes it is companies' responsibility to take care of customers, by providing worthwhile warranties and good customer service and really good product and reliable product. And I think this number 1 essay really points out to how all competence, benevolence, and problem-solving skills should be mixed in order to suit customers' needs.
Right.
Yeah.
I also like number 1 better because number 1 has a story and it's better read. Now, in terms of number 2, again, it reads like a list. And there are things that make it easier for a grader to know, okay, this kid got this one right and that one right. But in comparison to A, it's certainly not an impressive essay.
Yeah.
However, I do want to make a point saying that essay 2 has stronger vocabulary in terms of using the right terminology.
Yeah.
Now, they both use good words, right? However, when it comes to number 2, and if you read it with this mindset, as a professor's mindset, you'll know that it's definitely easier to grade. Now, one thing about Hanyang University is that professors know what to look for, and there are set of things that an essay needs to have in order to be a correct or passing essay. Compared to Yeondae or 고려대학교, Yonsei, they actually respect your idea even if you're wrong. And if you could support your idea in a very reasonable way, then that's good. That's even better sometimes.
Yeah.
But then for Hanyang University, there are a set of things that professors specifically look for. So with that in mind, Hanyang University essay number 2 here, whoever wrote it probably have gotten a good enough score to pass it because finding those key terms for a professor is definitely very easy with this. Now, what really got me not so happy with essay 2 is despite the fact that essay 1 also has only, say, 2 sentences and essay 2 also has 2 sentences, essay 2 is just clearly a repeat of things said.
Yeah.
Whereas essay 1, they have tried at least, to make it different. Now, students have asked me many times, what should I do with conclusions? Because it is true with Hanyang University, students always are pressed by time.
Yeah.
You're not going to have enough time to write a full-fledged essay. But, you should still try to. And, therefore, you're not going to write a long conclusion with these type of essays. However, you should still try to make it less looking like a list of things or repeat of things.
Yeah.
So that's why I like essay 1, and I'm glad that you agree. All right. My word of advice is a practical one. As I said at the very beginning of today's episode, is that cognitive dissonance is a very popular topic, whichever test you are studying. However, if you're a high school student, which you probably are, whether you're in Korea or in the States, try to make time to read and go back to some of the 수능 passages that you have read that deals with the idea of cognitive dissonance, which you will find at least couple or 5 or 7 even in a book. Now, sometimes it may not use the terminology cognitive dissonance because, as you mentioned earlier, it is relatable to rationalization, self-rationalization. However, read it and read those paragraphs in English and read those translation in Korean because that way you'll get the full extent of knowledge. And if you read those chunks, which usually only is a paragraph, right? you'll have far better understanding. And if you have some of those interesting thoughts memorized, you will be able to use them in an essay.
Yeah.
Also, cognitive dissonance, there's going to be a lot of videos on YouTube that you can find that are only a few minutes long, which I will also leave it as a link underneath our video. But find them, watch them, because it's one of the terms that you definitely want to learn the right definition of.
Yeah.
All right. So that's it with our video. I hope we have been helpful to you. And good luck, guys.